Welcome again, everyone. What did you think of the first presentation? There was a lot of good information in there. I thought Officer Butler did a great job on that one, that's for sure. I'm going to be talking about a few different things today. As Max said, my name is Sean Wraight. I work for the Ministry of Transportation. I work out of the London office, so it was a fun journey getting up here today, but I always like getting up in this area. You are fortunate to live in a very beautiful part of this province. Very envious of it. It's always nice to come up here, so I thank the organizers for inviting me today. But today, the title of my presentation is Driving Longer and Safer, and it is kind of a continuation of Officer Butler's presentation. But I'm going to be concentrating more on the Senior Driver License Renewal Program, particularly what the Ministry of Transportation currently has. I'm going to ask some questions of you, and I'm going to allow you to ask questions. I'm going to ask you to hold them off unless you need clarification during the presentation itself until the end of the presentation, if you wouldn't mind. But I'll ask you a couple of questions on that today. I promise I won't get too intrusive. I'm just interested in your opinions on a couple of things. First of all, I always like to at least start off with a few statistics. Now, I understand a lot of people don't really like statistics. It can be a little boring for some. I think they're great, to tell you the truth, because they really do help me establish a picture or give you an idea of what the conditions are out there are really like. For instance, the road safety picture in this province. If we watch the news every night, we might have a different impression as to the road safety picture in this province, and it might even instill a little bit of fear in us. But I can assure you the roads in this province are some of the safest in North America. Now, in 2015 in Ontario, we recorded the lowest number of fatalities since 1944, and we're doing really, really well. Now, understand, this is the second lowest number of road fatalities in North America per 10,000 licensed drivers. So this year, I believe, we're second only to Prince Edward Island, and we're doing really well for a province this size and so on. And again, it might be slightly contrary to what we think is the actual case. We see a lot about the crashes and so on. You'll never hear me use the word accident either. I prefer to use the word crash, okay? Because accidents can be prevented and so on. Understand, long-term trends indicate those substantial reductions in fatality and injury rates. Since 2006, fatalities are down by over a third and injuries are down by 25%. However, and this is always the proviso that I want to make, we all have work to do. We have issues in this province with a lot of ongoing road safety priorities. I'll remind you about a couple of them, but I also want to hear from you as to what concerns you out there when you're on the roads. For the last 16 years, Ontario has been ranked either first or second in North America for road safety, and that's a great achievement for us. But understand, as I said, we still have work to do. One person is injured in a drinking and driving crash every 3.6 hours in this province. One person is injured in a speed-related crash every 1.4 hours. And I saw a lot of speeding today, even coming up here on some of the rural highways, and I was really surprised. These were roads that were ice-covered and snow-covered, and yet people were speeding and passing when they shouldn't have been. But it happens. One person is injured every 8.5 minutes on our roadways. One collision occurs every 3 minutes. And I guess this one's the most sobering of all. One person is killed every 18 hours in this province. And that in itself is a target that we have to change. We want to improve our driving. That's part of the reason why you're here today. To learn about some driving techniques and so on that may improve your driving, but just understanding it a little better. Again, I'll be focusing on some other things today as well, including the driver license renewal program, which I mentioned. I also want to have a short little part on being a safe pedestrian as well, because we're all out there walking from time to time, and it's very, very important that as a pedestrian that you are safe and that you're visible to drivers and so on. I have some reflectors. I'd ask you to come up and see me at the end. I have some reflectors for your zipper pulls on your coats. And just a little safety feature for yourself, especially if you're out there walking. You can put them on your dog's leash if you'd like. They work great, I assure you, and I'll show you a little video as to why it's important that you are visible, especially this time of year to traffic and so on. Now, the number of older drivers in this province is increasing, and it's increasing substantially. I've actually heard this phenomenon, I was reading about it over the Christmas break, called the silver tsunami, which I thought was an interesting term, but it seemed apropos considering if you look at our figures here, of the 9.5 million licensed drivers in this province, just over 3 million of those licensed drivers are aged 45 plus. Well, it's about a third of the drivers on the road are considered older drivers. So it's an interesting statistic, and I will get back to it because it is that number that helps me explain why we have some of the programs that we do with the Ministry of Transportation, why we do the type of testing and so on that we do. And some of it will dovetail with what Officer Butler had to say. But as we age, our driving changes significantly. And I will get into some of that as well. For instance, we take more medications and so on when we drive. And I'll talk about some of the effects of that and what it can do to your driving. Now, recent MTO licensing data indicates that the number of licensed drivers has increased from 90,000 in 1996 to almost 290,000 in 2014, and even more today. I don't have those exact figures today, but the population is expected to grow to 350,000 in 2020 and double that in 2040. Rate of fatal collisions involving senior drivers continues to be higher, though, than that of the general population. And I'll get into some of that as to why that is the case. Between 2004 and 2014, the average at-fault fatal collision involvement rate for drivers aged 80 plus was double the rate for drivers of all ages. So it's a significant number. I'll show you how it looks on a graph because that is the really telling indicator. You can see on here the age of the drivers and the rate of collision and so on. And this is between 2005 and 2014. So this is our young and novice driver group where there is a fair number of collisions on there, fatal collision involvement, for instance. And as we move down here to our older drivers, that is where we see the greatest number of those collisions taking place and so on. So there's a reason for that. And again, some of our programs that we have at the Ministry of Transportation, for instance, the driver license renewal for drivers 80 plus, that's why we do a cognitive test, for instance. I'll get into that and what that's all about. I should poll the audience again, though. I talked about that earlier as far how many people have renewed their license after the age of 80 and taken the group education session in the room? The session, basically the 80 plus session. So a few people in the room.
4 times.
Really? Very good.
And 5th time next month.
Very, very good. And obviously you've been successful. I believe Officer Butler called you a keener, and I think that's great. Well done, sir. So we have a few people with some actual experience. I want you to understand this, so what I'm about to talk about today doesn't constitute you coming to a group education session. Consider this more or less just a dress rehearsal, if you will. I'm here just to give you an idea what to expect at these things, what, a few of you may be a few years off as to turning 80. So this will be useful information to you for family members and so on, as to it's a relatively new program. So some of the program goals at the ministry, though, we want to educate senior drivers. We want to allow senior drivers to be safe, and we want them to drive longer. The safety of all drivers on our roads, though, is our utmost priority. Ontario's senior driver programs aim to keep senior drivers driving for as long as they can safely do so. And that's, in a nutshell, what our program, the Senior Driver License Renewal Program, what that's all about. So as of April 21st, 2014, and some of the experienced people, that have had the test already can tell you this is what they went through. The group education session, we'll call it heretofore throughout this presentation. Instead of a 3.5-hour session like it used to be, it's now an hour and a half. The knowledge test, which previously took place, has now been replaced by 2 non-computerized screening tools. These are cognitive screening tools. Some of you may have heard about this, draw the face of a clock, a letter cancellation test, and so on. And there's a reason why we do the cognitive testing, and I'll get into that in a few minutes and what that's all about. But it's these two screening tools that are designed to detect declines in competence or cognitive function or our brain function. Because if there are issues with cognition, there will be issues with your driving. So how successful is the program? Let's talk about that briefly first. In 2014, 115,432 drivers took the group education session. Almost 4,000 of those were referred to for a road test. So that's an indication that they were not successful. They did have a 97% success rate with it though. So 97% of the people that went through that program, and the rates continue at the same rate, so 97%, that's the number of people that are passing this. So it's a good indication. Over 130,000 now attend the group education sessions annually. So if you've ever called to make an appointment, that might explain why it's sometimes difficult to make appointments and get through the line. I'll give you some tips on that a little bit later in the presentation and what that's all about. But this is a really busy service that we offer. So have some patience when you do call to make your appointments. Now I'm going to give you an overview of the GES. I'm just going to grab my water if you don't mind before I lose my voice. Just an overview of the group education session. We'll talk about the purpose of the Senior Driver License Renewal Program and what it's all about. Strengths of senior drivers 80 plus, of which I think there are many. I know in the previous presentation, a couple of you talked about the road conditions and so on. Senior drivers have lived through a lot of winters. My 20-year-old son, who just got his full license, he has not. He hasn't had that experience on the roadway that a lot of you had. Experience is everything when it comes to driving. And driving longer, safer, that experience is going to really work in your favor. You know how to deal when you see inclement weather approaching, or you know what a snowy and icy covered road can be like. You know how to navigate those. Effects of getting older on driving, and there are many, and I'll get into some of those shortly. Medications in driving. As we age, we start taking more medications, and stronger medications at that. So understand that these medications can impact the quality of our driving, and it's important to know that. Again, I'll touch on that shortly. High-risk situations. Does anybody know what a high-risk situation would? Give me an example of one. Weather, absolutely. Weather today, 1 minute it's nice and clear, the next minute it's blowing, whiteouts and so on. Excellent. Bad brakes? Sure, absolutely. It's important to do your maintenance checks.
Going in and out?
For sure, weaving in and out of traffic, all of these things. These are high-risk situations.
An ambulance or a fire engine coming at you in the wrong lane.
Yes, absolutely, and that can be a problem. And I can touch on that a bit later as well. Does everyone know what the rules of the road are when it comes to dealing with emergency vehicles? Pull over to the side when it's safe to do so. You need to pull over to the right. Allow them to do their business. Understand too, under new law in this province, it also applies to tow trucks. If there's a working tow truck at the side of the road with the lights on, you also have to allow them distance in that as well. These people are doing their job. So it's important that you don't interfere with that, and that you're cautious of them, because oftentimes they're exposed to traffic and so on. So it's important that you follow the rules of the road when it comes to that. Safe driving practices and signs, some new signs out there. Anybody seen any new signs recently? Anything? I see a lot of them recently. The 511 sign, it's a blue sign. That's a travel information. A lot of people think it's solely dedicated to winter driving. It's not. It's for traveler information. So it works 365 days a year. If you want to get information on any provincial highway, the conditions of it, whether they be construction or weather related and so on. And I would urge you to call 511, not when you're driving. You can access it from your computer and so on as well, and find out what the conditions are, especially as part of your trip planning process. All of that's really, really important. But it's a great service. It's free. It's dedicated to your particular area. You can call on other areas of the province as well, and it's all voice activated, super easy to use, and I would recommend it. Again, it's 511 traveler information. Alternatives to driving, when it might be time to consider hanging up the keys. And these are the practical discussions that will take place at the group education session itself. These are important considerations to make that everyone should make, and everyone should make these considerations with their family members. And it's very, very important that we eventually do that. Okay? Again, at the group education session, 2 short handwritten exercises to help assess your current fitness to drive. I will show you the specific examples as to what those constitute, what they look like, and maybe some of the people that have already taken it can offer a little bit of experience as to what theirs was, but I'll show you that shortly. You'll also undergo a confidential driver record review at the session itself. It's a one-on-one thing. It's not something that's shared with the group. Now, the renewal application itself, this is how it works basically. On your 80th birthday, a license renewal form and letter is mailed to you approximately 90 days before your current license expires. Now, is your birthday coming soon and you have not received your renewal notice in the mail? You may have moved, your address may have changed, and the letter may not have made it to you. You need to contact us. You can find the number, there's a 1-800 number in the booklet that I brought for everyone today. There's copies in the back if you need additional ones. That's in there. It's in the blue pages. You can contact Service Ontario on that as well. But we can get you signed up for a group education session if you are not notified by mail. Renewal application itself, as I said, is mailed out approximately 90 days prior to the license expiry. And understand that all of the requirements that are necessary have to be completed before the current driver's license expires. The expiry date, again, is on the front of your driver's license. I don't know if, we'll see if I can point it out to you. I'll show you a better one there. It's on the front. It's on the right-hand side, right about there, okay? So just understand, and it's a good date for you to know and know when your current driver's license does expire. So that's where you find that, though. We do a good job of finding you, though. If your license is about to expire, we'll do everything we can to notify you of that. Now, the renewal application itself will tell you exactly, the letter will tell you exactly what you need to do. I speak with the counselors who offer these sessions a lot. They constantly remind me to tell you all, please keep the letter and form and bring that with you to the session, though. You definitely need that there. Again, the license expiry date can be found on the application that you receive in the mail, and it's also on your driver's license, as I indicated. So call and book your session. That's the 1-800 number. It's in your book. It'll be on the application and so on. So the phone number, as I said, is on that letter. Have your driver's license number ready with you, though, because that's what's going to identify you as the driver making the appointment and so on. So when you talk to the operator at the other end, have your license with you. The group education session, when you attend the session, there's also a vision test that day and the 2 cognitive screening tool tests. And I'll get into those. I'll show you what those look like. The whole thing should take about 90 minutes in total. Remember to bring that renewal form with you, though, to the session. This is what a typical session looks like, a group education session. It's not entirely unlike what we're doing today. That's why I like to call this a dress rehearsal. There's no anxieties. What I'm trying to do is ease some of those anxieties. Nobody likes tests. Nobody likes exams and so on. This isn't an exam per se, but it still causes some. Don't be anxious about it. It's actually a very good experience for the most part. The senior group education session, the things you need to bring, your driver's license, temporary driver's license if you were issued one. Now, temporary driver's license are issued if you make an appointment and it falls after your license expires, and they will give you a temporary driver's license if they can't get you in before your license expires. So bring either of those. Bring the license renewal form letter. Eyeglasses for use and for driving. Bring and wear your hearing aid if you need one. Bring water and a snack, especially if you're diabetic. Reason we want to make you comfortable. Again, we don't want to make you anxious. We don't want to make you uncomfortable. So bring these things. This is an interactive session, not entirely unlike what we're doing today. Participate in the discussions, but most of all, relax, and you'll do fine. Now, the vision test. The vision test happens at the time of your scheduled group education session. Officer Butler talked about the importance of vision, particularly when we're driving. We want to make sure that your vision is good. It will be tested with a very, very brief test. You do have the option, though, of bringing a certificate from a ophthalmologist or optometrist, as long as that certificate is not older than 6 months. Okay?
I just got mine done.
And you can take that with you. If you were to have a session, you could take that as long as it's not older than 6 months. Don't bring the receipt. You paid for the certificate for the examination. That's happened. But rather bring the actual examination form that comes from an eye care professional. Again, it's valid for 6 months, and if you were to bring that form, you wouldn't have to take the test, although it's just a basic test, and you're more than welcome to take it if you want to. So this is the mystery cognitive screening tool I talked about and what that's all about. Since I'm sure some of you have heard about this. The people that have taken the test obviously know about it and so on. But this is the test that replaces the knowledge test. This cannot be practiced or memorized or anything like that. This is the kind of this is a cognitive test. This is a certified test that has been tested extensively. We're finding it works to detect any cognition issues within drivers and so on. This is a example of what we want to see, where they put the face of a clock, numbers inside the clock with the appropriate time designation as you're told to do. Now, these are some failed attempts, where you'll see the hands in the wrong position, some of them hands not there, numbers not there on the face of the clock, or hands not there. But those are, I'll show you a little bit better picture ahead as I get through this. This is the letter cancellation test. This is the second test that you would do that's a cognition test as well, where you'll be asked to cross out all of the letter H's. And for the life of me, I probably couldn't cross them out if they were that small either. I'll show you what they look like shortly as well. I assure you, you'll have them in front of you. You'll have 5 minutes for each test and you can do them.
The clock will go.
Yes, that's right. So what is cognitive impairment though? I'm sure you've heard about this, but cognitive impairment is when a person has trouble remembering and learning new things, concentrating, making decisions that affect their everyday life. Cognitive impairment ranges from mild to severe. With mild impairment, it's fairly normal. People may begin to notice changes in some of their cognitive or brain functions, but will still be able to do their everyday activities. But severe levels of impairment can lead to losing the ability to understand the meaning or importance of something, or the ability to talk or write, resulting in that inability to live independently. And those are some practical examples of those cognitive diseases. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other related dementias. Again, the cognitive test that we ask of you is to do this clock drawing test. And that's basically the finished product. That's what we want to see. You'll have 5 minutes to complete. It's in your booklet as well, so you can have a look at it, know what to expect. You can self-correct and understand that only correctness, not neatness, is evaluated. Don't make it so bad that it's hard to discern, but that's important. Only correctness is what's important here. So the clock drawing test, why a clock drawing test? Where do we make the correlation here? Well, it has everything to do with visuospatial ability. Visuospatial skills are the abilities to recognize and organize information when you see something and then interpret what you see. This is something we do when we drive. When driving, the ability is used to accurately position and maneuver a car, staying in the proper lane, assessing space for entering traffic flow. Officer Butler talked about some of the rules of the road on that. Detecting other objects on the road, detecting pedestrians. Those little surprises that always happen. I've had 3 deer run in front of me this season alone.
It happened to me once.
Yeah, and it's common, especially this time of year. Judging distances and finding your way to the destination. These are the reasons why we do the cognitive testing. This is the letter cancellation component that I spoke about as well, where you're asked to cross out all of the letter H's. That's what they look like. You'll have 2 series, groups of letters, cross out all the letter H's, 5 minutes to complete, and only omissions and not errors are counted. And an important distinction, don't cross out every letter on the thing and think you're going to get away with that either. It doesn't. It will result in an immediate failure. They want you to cross out the letter H's. And the letter cancellation test, This has to do with your psychomotor ability and speed ability and what that's all about. The amount of time it takes to process a signal. So when you see something and react to that, we're constantly doing that when we're driving. And we want to make sure that, that our brains are functioning properly, that we can react to those sudden surprises, those pedestrians and so on that often cross at the wrong spot. I mentioned wildlife and so on, all of those things. Thinking about what other drivers, pedestrians are doing and so on. It's important that as a driver, your brain is functioning properly. And this is a way for us to test that you are. Now, renewing your driver's license, just some practical, some housekeeping notes on that. Your license is renewed at Service Ontario. So it's renewed after the group education session once you've passed it successfully. And you can check your government services section of the phone book. Understand that every 10 years you are required to have a photo done as well to update your license. So you may be requiring a new photo as well when you renew. Now, what happens if a senior fails the in-class screening component? He or she will be referred to for a road test or referred to medical review where further assessment is required. Now, and I showed you the statistics earlier, but MTO does anticipate that a small percentage of drivers will fail. Now, what do you do if you do have to do a road test? Well, the session counselor that day, the person that's doing it, they'll give you instructions on what to do, but basically you will be contacting the nearest drive test center, and it'll be all marked on the front of your envelope. Again, this is if you are not successful with the group education session. Road testing, if it is required though, they're only going to test your basic driving skills. They're not going to take you out on the Highway 400 or no highway driving. They want to test the basic driving skills, and that's what that will entail. Now, why do I have to do a road test? An unsuccessful result of the group education session, usually based on the 2 in-class screening components, a review of your driving record if you've had too many demerit points or at-fault collisions and so on, you may be required to take a road test then. This is the other thing as well. If a language barrier is determined at the time of scheduling, they only offer the course in English. So if there's a language barrier determined and the person is not able to understand English, they would be required to take a road test as well. So how can I prepare for that eventual road test? Read the Ontario Driver's Handbook, and I would urge you all to have a look at that from time to time. We publish it and print it every 3 years, new ones with new information, new laws and so on. So it's a good one to have. You can get them at Walmart, Shoppers Drug Mart. I think they're about $14.99. Or better yet, you can download a copy off our website in PDF form and view it on your tablet or your computer. Go to your public library. They have multiple copies as well. Sign it out. Have a look through it. Page 24 has lots of helpful tips, but practice safe driving habits. Arrive to your appointment 30 minutes prior to complete your check-in procedures, and bring a valid G licensed driver with you in case you are not successful with the road test. Now, staying safe and mobile, some recommended activities, and Officer Butler mentioned this, and I was really pleased to hear this, but it's important to maintain your physical activity. Drive on a daily basis to maintain a comfort level with your driving. You can take refresher courses like the 55 Alive course that was mentioned. There's courses with CAA as well that can be taken. Have your eyes checked regularly. We understand the correlation between good vision and good driving. Have those checked regularly. But stay physically and mentally fit. Now, the senior driver license renewal frequency. You're going to be asked to renew your license every 2 years. And you can renew your license up to 6 months before it expires. So if you're going south for the winter or something like that, you can renew it up to 6 months prior to having to leave. The senior group education session, just a couple of things. I want you to remember these. Relax at these sessions. Don't be anxious about them, okay? Listen and participate in the discussions. Bring some water, bring some snacks. Be comfortable here, okay? You can get more information on our website there. You can just type in MTO senior drivers and it'll take you right to that. But our website has a lot of great information. Someone was asking about distracted driving recently, and we've updated that. It's got some good information on there for drivers to understand, to have some options, some tips as to how to deal with that issue. I'm going to bypass this one for now. I want to touch on medical conditions though. Someone mentioned it to me at the break actually, but I want to explain exactly what constitutes a medical condition and the medical reporting process. I can't get into great detail on it, but again, this is a great place. Our website has a lot of good information on the medical reporting or medical review process. But understand this, Section 203 of the Highway Traffic Act requires physicians to report any patient age 16 or older who has a medical condition that may make it dangerous or unsafe to operate a motor vehicle to the Ministry of Transportation. So that's not only older drivers that a physician would report. Physicians cannot suspend the driver's license. It is done by medical review. Aging, again, this is a natural process that happens to us all. But with aging comes that decreasing agility and flexibility. That's why Officer Butler was talking about the fact why it's important to do our exercises daily, why it's important, she said, we did some shoulder exercises and so on. Those shoulder checks don't get any easier as we age, but they're essential and very, very important that we do those. But our eyesight gets weaker as well. And I mentioned earlier, we start taking more medications, stronger medications. We also face a declining ability to recognize, interpret, and react to a changing traffic environment, which is a long way of saying exactly what I reminded you of earlier. These are the little surprises in that out there. We need to be sharp, and any physical activity and so on is going to benefit us, keep our brains active and so on. Attention and concentration. We need more time to recognize hazardous situations and process that information in our brains and decide on what the appropriate maneuver is when we're driving, okay? And these are the typical type of exercises, again, concentrating on the neck and upper body, but as we age, we see decreases in arm and leg strength and underlying medical problems as well. Maintaining your cognitive health, though, I can assure you is just as important. So avoid boredom. Do what you're doing today. Come out to these presentations and so on. Learn new things. It's great. Arts and crafts, tending a garden, caring for a pet, all of those things. And I like that. Learning something new, trying new recipes. All of these stimulate our brains, and that's really, really important to work to maintaining our cognitive health. Even playing games, crossword puzzles, all of these things stimulate the brain, keep us active mentally as well as physically. A few more notes on medications. Seniors do take more medications, and our bodies take longer to eliminate medications and alcohol. If we had a drink with dinner, for instance, or what have you. And as we age, fewer drinks can impact or impair our driving. I'm not advocating at this time anything to do with drinking and driving. I'm just saying know what your limits are, though, because they change, especially if we're taking more medications, stronger medications. Understand how those interactions work with our bodies and so on, because they will affect your driving. What are the possible effects of medications on our driving? It's a whole laundry list of things. These are powerful drugs at times that we have to take. Side effects including drowsiness and sleepiness, blurred vision, tremors, memory lapses. These are not conducive to good, safe driving. So it's important to know your medications. Have your discussions with your pharmacists, have your discussions with your physicians as well, and understand how medications are going to affect your driving. And we'll get into alternative transportation as well. Now I understand the situation in Collingwood or in the area can be a little bit different. Public transportation maybe not as frequent, say, as Toronto or other large centers. So we do rely on friends and family perhaps more in these areas. This is an option that some people could consider as well, keeping your vehicle for others to drive. You know, that's an option for you. Reliance on volunteer drivers. And this is one that I do like. Obviously, you're getting in your exercise as well, and just walking. I want to touch on pedestrian and personal mobility devices as well, and then we'll come to the end of the presentation. I do have a short section on roundabouts at the end of the presentation, and you're welcome to stay. I will end the presentation, and then if you want to stay for the roundabout section, I would ask that you do, because it's a 5-minute video, and with all of the numbers that I'm seeing up here as far as construction on roundabouts, there's a lot more. So it's a good video, so hang around for that. But just a few things on mobility devices. Understand that a mobility device, not unlike the one that's back there, if not permitted on the sidewalks by bylaw, you need to travel along the left shoulder of the road facing traffic. Avoid operation of scooters on any designated bicycle-only lane. If you're using an assistive device like that, you are considered a pedestrian, so therefore you should be on the sidewalk. For pedestrian safety, again, cross at the lights and crosswalks, and this applies to walkers as well as anyone using an assistive device. But cross at lights and crosswalks and crossovers, you may have heard about those, not between cars or from the middle block. Stop when you're at the controlling intersection. Stop, look left, look right, and look left again. I work with a public health nurse, and she said, I look behind me, I look in front of me, and I'm scanning all the time. And it's really practical advice. You need to know where the traffic is. Make sure drivers see you before you cross, and that means making eye contact. Don't carry items that may affect your balance, and wear something light or bright day and night. And don't wear white at night and think that that's what's going to save you. I'm going to show you a short little video. I mentioned I do have some reflectors as well for everyone if you want to come up and see me after. I don't have a lot, but I'll share with as many as I have with people. I do want to show you this. I had some issues with this running earlier, but hopefully it'll work today. Just a short video. So how many runners do you see there in the video? 3? So imagine as a driver, you're approaching these runners at night, normal, getting a little closer, 250 feet. 100 feet. So it's a really good video, and I really like it because it really underscores the importance of being a safe pedestrian, first of all, but even as a driver, to understand that those surprises are out there, and not everyone is always wearing reflective items. If you can get them, though, try to get them. Mark's Work Wearhouse are fantastic for that kind of stuff, where they've got the reflective elements built right into coats. They're in shoes and so on, wherever my reflectors are. But yeah, I've got a few of these today as well. They're zipper pulls for your coats, and I assure you these work great. They look relatively innocuous, but I can assure you, if you put this on your coat, it will help you be seen. They work really, really well. And your pets, you could put that on there, absolutely. So it's a very good point, sir. So let's do this. If you have any questions, first of all, okay? And then if you want to leave, I do have a roundabout video that I want to show, but if you feel it necessary to leave or anything, feel free to do so. But we'll start that after the questioning, okay? So, yes, sir.
Where are these sessions held?
The sessions, it varies. They're held in most areas wherever there's a Service Ontario and so on. I guarantee that they're usually within half an hour from your home. They try to accommodate as many people as they can. I know they'd be right within this community, for instance, Some of the smaller ones, not so much, okay? Some you may have to drive to Owen Sound. I know they do them there as well. They do them in Barrie. But when you call, you will tell them your address and so on, and they will find the one that's closest to you, okay?
Do
Yep.
the Muskoka Beach.
Wasaga Beach, okay. There, Wasaga, yep.
Yes,
I'll get you, yeah.
You mentioned medications.
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't realise if you want top quality advice on your medications, you consult the pharmacist, not the doctor.
And that's why I made that decision or that distinction when I said always talk to your pharmacist. Talk to the pharmacist first. Absolutely, and they'll give you information when they dispense your drugs and so on. But they do have a lot of good information on it. Good point, sir. Thank you.
I don't know if many pharmacists do it, but my pharmacist personally calls me in every few months for a sit down.
For a review, yes, I've heard that, and it's a great service for the ones that do offer it like that. It's good. That's a really good distinction, sir. Thank you for making that. Yes.
A number of people have disabled parking.
Yeah.
And quite often, if I'm giving somebody a ride, they don't have their disabled parking thing with them. And I think that's something, if you are giving somebody a ride and they have disabled parking, ask them, do you have the piece that I could put in my window? And,
Right.
then we could park closer to wherever you need to go.
Right. Yeah, it's important because you would need that. Otherwise, you'd probably, there's more than likely a municipal bylaw that would, if that isn't present in the vehicle, you would be fined.
Yes.
So, good point. Yes, sir.
I hardly ever see any pedestrians with reflectors. By the way, I think it would be terrific, but I find black clothing very, very bad too.
Yeah, absolutely. Wear colorful clothing. The misnomer is though, like, and that's why I show the video, thinking that if I'm wearing a white t-shirt or I'm wearing white clothing, that it's going to be enough to save me. And you can clearly see in that video, it's not. It's the retro-reflective or the reflective clothing or the reflective elements within your shoes, within your coats, within a reflector tag or something like that. That's what you really need and to make yourself more visible. It's darker early in the morning. It's darker late at night as well, or towards dusk. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I don't think we can be traffic law, but you have to have a safety vest and visibility everywhere. They're a lot easier to see them.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea, considering pedestrian safety is very, very important to the ministry. We have a lot of programs designed around that, and our numbers are up, unfortunately. So I'm compelled to agree with you, ma'am. Like if there was a way that we could do it. If there was a way we could do it, believe me, I would love to see that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Make yourself more visible. We'll do our part today with this, at least. Yes, sir.
My wife, when she goes out at night, she takes a little flashlight with her.
Great idea. This gentleman mentions taking a flashlight with you. I noticed that the other day. My neighbor was walking his dog and he had a flashlight with him. I saw the flashlight 500 meters down the road. I didn't see him, but I saw the flashlight. And you know what I mean? And it makes a big difference. So anything, again, make yourself more visible at night, early morning. Very, very critical.
It also helps you see where the puddles are, or
For sure.
a little bit of ice. Or
Another good point. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes.
Another question I have, with this distracted driving,
Yep.
and dog loosing the car between the driver and the steering wheel, is that not distracted?
No. To answer your question, is it distraction? Yes, it's a distraction. Is it finable under the law? Can you get a fine for that? No, not unless you're involved in a crash or something like that.
The dog did.
Well, you could be charged with a careless offense in that case, but right now the distracted driving charge applies to electronic devices only. GPS, cell phone, and all you have to do is touch that cell phone and you can be guilty of that offense. So very, very important. What's that?
Now they brought in eating and drinking coffee.
It doesn't pertain to the law though.
Oh, really?
It only applies to electronic devices. And again, I'm not condoning eating and drinking or grooming or anything like that or having a pet loose in there. I'm suggesting though that under the law, it's electronic devices that are. But yes, it's important to minimize those distractions, whether they be cognitive distractions. Officer Butler said, never drive angry. Great advice. Don't drive. Keep your eye on the wheel, or in traffic, keep your head in traffic in that as well. You want to be unoccupied. You want to make that your primary responsibility. So that's what you want to really seek to achieve with that. But yes, unfortunately, it's a bit of a misnomer about the law that, yeah, an officer can pull you over for eating or drinking. He might want to warn you that it's not a good idea. And again, I don't condone it, but it's not part of the law. It would only be part of the law if you were involved in some kind of crash and you were charged with careless driving, okay? Because that could lead to a careless charge. It's just an important distinction. Yep?
Many of the new cars have electronic devices that you have to look at a screen and touch it. Now, that's an electronic device that is distracting you. Would that be an offense under the law?
Potentially. Again, it could lead to a careless charge. What they are trying to do is encourage drivers to do all of their pre-programming on their GPSs, to make their phone calls. You can still use a Bluetooth device, and if it's one-touch activation, you can touch that and not be breaking the law and so on. But if you're adjusting your temperatures and so on, and when it's something you should do before you actually begin your trip, that's a problem. So understand, and I get it. I know these new vehicles have a lot of electronic features and so on, and oftentimes they require a little bit of tinkering and so on. Where it's safe to do so, pull the car over to the side of the road, stop at a rest area, stop at a parking area, make your adjustments then. It's a lot safer. Because anything that takes your eyes off of the road in front of you is a distraction. So anything that you can do to kind of mitigate those distractions, I urge you to do those. Yeah.
So it is okay to press a button on your steering wheel to answer a incoming call?
One button, yes. But it has to be Bluetooth enabled. You can't touch that phone. The idea is that you're using a Bluetooth device or what have you. You can touch that one button to activate it because you can keep your eyes on the wheel, or again on traffic and so on when you're out there. There's a real fulsome discussion on our website where it talks about the different distractions and so on, but it's important to distinguish what the law is, and again, it refers to electronic devices, specifically cell phones. Cell phones are what are taking our attentions away from traffic. When you're trying to text someone, for instance, or you're trying to make that phone call, and that's what's truly distracting. If you're mentally distracted, you're physically distracted, you're manually distracted as well with all of those, and that's what they're trying to curb with this new law. You know, eventually, yes, I would love to see it if we could incorporate eating pets and so on and that, but right now, it's not a part of that. It's only a part of that if you were to be involved in a crash, like I said. So it's just an important distinction that everyone knows. And again, I'm not condoning that you're drinking hot coffee and eating. It's much safer to pull over, go into the restaurant, whatever you have to do. Focus on the task at hand, focus on driving.
Newer vehicles, if you try to press the button, it's going to say that function is not.
Yep, and even some of the cell phones.
Any new vehicles in years, I think,
For sure. It's a good point. So,
I was going to ask, you talked about you can't have a child sitting on your knee when you're driving, but you do see people with dogs sitting on their lap or with their head hanging out the driver's window. Can they not be charged with that? Is that
again, yes, they could be charged, they could get a careless charge in that case. It's not a distracted charge. It would be a careless charge in that
if
case.
they're not in an accident?
It would be officer's discretion. You could get a warning. Again, most of the time when careless charges are laid, it's as a result of a crash or something like that. You could get a warning from an officer if they see the dog unattended and so on. In fact, the OPP are going to be doing a program, I believe it's in the spring, and it's specifically around unsecured pets in vehicles and why it's important to make sure that they are secured and so on, because they can be a real problem. They can be, especially for drivers. I've seen them in person's laps when they're driving. Leave Fido at home if you can, honestly. It's much safer. So I'm going to talk about roundabouts unless you have to leave. One more question?
How do you know when speed limits mean what they say? For example, you go on the 400s and there's no rule, it seems. The signs are there. Everybody's driving whatever. Get on a backcountry road and you could be checked for going over 5 kilometers over the speed limit.
Again, it's officer's discretion. One of the things that they'll tell you, because this question comes up consistently, if you're traveling the speed of traffic and so on, which is normal. But I heard an interesting phrase, and basically what the person said was, in a 100 kilometer zone, 114 is fine, 115 you're mine, which means you could potentially be fined for that. You are over the limit, and potentially it can result in a fairly hefty fine. The best thing you can do, again, oftentimes if you've got traffic that's moving at 120 kilometers, you want to stay with traffic and not become a hindrance on the roadway and so on. But use your discretion. If it gets to be too fast for you, move over to the first lane and stay in that lane and maintain your speed limit. Okay, it's much safer. I understand, and Officer Butler referred to this, where everybody's in a hurry, you know, and honestly, if you're over that speed limit, you can be fined for that. The reason why it's on the road sign, 100 kilometers, you should be traveling at 100 kilometers. Just because your neighbor or the guy in the passing lane is going 130, it's much better to be.
Personally, I have seen people speeding, 3 cars speeding.
Mm-hmm.
The cop is sitting there with his little gauge. He let 2 of them go by, and he nailed the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he nail all 3?
He's only able to do so many of them.
So
You know what I
he
mean?
does the last one.
Enforcement's a difficult thing for officers, and yeah, absolutely, it is oftentimes the last one that's like that. Again, follow Officer Butler's advice that if you can get the licenses of those vehicles that you witnessed and so on, get the license. Honestly, you can report these. There's a 188 number that you can look up in the phone book and report these to the OPP, report them to local police services, and they can pay a visit to these people. It may not result in a charge, but oftentimes at least it's worth the talk. So, understood. So, yeah.
That advice from the constable is fallacious. Who here has photo memory to see the license plate? If you wrote it down on a piece of paper or took a picture of it, you'd be impaired.
Potentially, yeah. But again, if you can make a note of it, I don't know what else to tell you in that case, because she's like, I understand what you're saying, that yes, it can be a problem if you've got your pen and paper out and you're trying to transcribe a license. But again, it's one extra thing that you can do. That's really all I can say about that one. Yeah?
Buy a dash cam.
Buy a dash cam, possibly, yeah. As long as they're allowed in your municipalities, yeah.
But the worst thing is those tailgating idiots at 120, 125.
Yeah, can be a problem.
5 feet on top of each other. 3
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, or tailgating behind a large truck and so on. So I'm going to allow a few people to leave if they have to, but I want to just show you a short video on roundabouts, just because. 5 minutes? Oh, sorry. Okay. So we'll talk about roundabouts briefly, just to conclude it. No, that's okay. I understand. Cool.
Yours is somewhere else.
Probably. Oh, where did I put that? Oh, it's no big deal. So why roundabouts? First of all, let's take a brief poll. How many people actually like roundabouts? Excellent. That's the first time that's happened. Normally, how many people like using roundabouts? How many people know how to use roundabouts? Excellent. They're not such a bad thing, I assure you. The big thing about roundabouts you have to understand with them, and the fact that you're seeing more of these engineering marvels out there on the roadways now, are due to improved safety and so on that come along with it. Definitely fewer collisions because of the reduced speeds. And because we're slowing down to yield at these roundabouts and so on, there's therefore fewer injuries. So they may be a little bit of a pain at first to understand what they mean, what the rules of the road are around them, but they really do help to improve the whole traffic flow. They have increased capacity, and you'll actually get where you're going sooner when there's roundabouts present. Okay, Fewer stops, reduced delays, all of these things work towards making roundabouts a real practical alternative to standard intersections. There's less idling at them, so they're good for the environment as well, so less air pollution. These are the signs you typically see at roundabouts and so on, and what they're all about. You see the roundabout designation in 300 meters. You see the exit signs for the different streets and so on. Thank you very much. You see the designation for the proper lane you should be in, if it's multi-lane or single lane roundabout. And I'll let the video explain where you should be when you do those. It will also explain some of the rules of the road when there's a emergency vehicle or a transport truck present. Okay, so I'm going to show the video now.
Staff Sergeant Jan Engel, Ontario Provincial Police, and I'm here to talk about roundabouts.
Roundabouts are an alternate form of intersection control. They are designed to improve traffic flow and reduce collisions, and they're better for the environment too. Roundabouts are also easy to drive.
Based on the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, personal injury collisions at intersections can be reduced by 75% and fatal collisions by 90% by the use of roundabouts. This is due to slower speeds and the elimination of turning movements. It's highly unlikely that you're involved in a head-on collision or angle collision in a roundabout, as the vehicles are traveling slower in the same direction on the circular roadway.
Roundabouts can reduce pollution, fuel consumption, and delays by reducing idling time and unnecessary stops. Roundabouts are designed to allow continuous flow, unlike traditional intersections, where vehicles are forced to stop and wait their turn, even when there is no opposing traffic. When approaching a roundabout, you're required to yield to vehicles already in the circulatory roadway. But if there is an adequate gap in the circulatory traffic, you are not required to stop.
Here are some basic instructions for using roundabouts.
As you approach the roundabout, slow down and pull into the proper lane, depending on your destination. If you're going to turn right, you have to be in the right lane. If you're going to turn left, position yourself in the left lane. If you're going straight, you can enter either the left or the right lane. Pay attention to all signs and pavement markings. Watch for pedestrians and cyclists, and take note of vehicles already in or waiting to enter the roundabout. If there is more than one lane entering the roundabout, be sure that you are in the correct lane for your intended destination. Traffic already in the roundabout always has a right of way. When approaching the roundabout, pay special attention to any bicycles or pedestrians crossing the roadway, and yield to vehicles in the circular roadway as they have the right of way. Adjust your speed or stop at the yield sign if necessary. Watch for a safe opportunity to enter the roundabout. Enter only when there is adequate gap in the circulating traffic. Once in the roundabout, always keep to the right of the center island, in the appropriate lane, and travel in the counterclockwise direction. Don't change lanes within the roundabout. Do not stop in the roundabout except to avoid a collision. You have the right of way over entering traffic. Use your right turn signal to indicate your intent to exit the roundabout. Do so just after you pass the exit prior to the one that you intend to use, and ensure that there are no vehicles on your right impeding your exit. When exiting, be aware of the pedestrians who may be crossing the exit lane. If you miss your exit, continue carefully around the roundabout until you reach your exit again. A U-turn move can also be performed at the roundabout by simply staying in your lane until you reach the direction you came from. To recap, slow down as you approach the roundabout. Move into the proper lane. Be prepared to stop for any cyclists and pedestrians crossing or intending to cross the roadway. Yield to circulating traffic coming from your left. Enter to the right of the center island in a counterclockwise direction and signal your exit. It's just that simple.
Now let's go over a few more features of roundabouts and how to use them safely. Some people think that roundabouts aren't designed to handle large vehicles, but there are actually features built into the roundabouts that allow vehicles like buses and tractor trailers to navigate the roundabout easily. The slightly raised area around the outside of the center island is called the truck apron and designed to accommodate large vehicles. If you see a truck or a bus with the back wheels up on the apron, don't worry. That's what the truck apron is there for. Also, large vehicles may have to use more than one lane on the approach or within the roundabout to make a turn. All drivers should be aware of these features at the roundabout, and you should always give large vehicles plenty of room to maneuver. What about emergency vehicles? If you have not yet entered the roundabout, pull over to the right, if possible, and wait until the emergency vehicle has passed before proceeding. If you're in a roundabout when an emergency vehicle approaches, take your intended exit and proceed beyond the splitter island before pulling over as far as you safely can to stop, to the right side of the roadway, allowing emergency vehicles to pass. Splitter islands at the entrance to the roundabout guide traffic to enter the circular roadway to the right of the center island in a counterclockwise direction. Splitter islands also allow pedestrians to cross one direction of traffic at a time. Pedestrians should wait for a safe gap in traffic and then walk to the splitter island. Then cross from the splitter island to the far side of the road when the safe gap in traffic occurs. Not all pedestrian crossings at roundabouts are marked. If the pedestrian crossing is marked, pedestrians should indicate their intention to cross to the approaching driver. Ensure that the driver stops before the proceeding to cross the roadway. Do not enter the roadway until the vehicle stops. Cyclists have two options when traveling through roundabouts. For experienced cyclists, use the roundabout as if you were a vehicle. Signal your intent to merge into the middle of the appropriate approach lane prior to entering the roundabout. Stay in the middle of that lane. Follow all the rules that apply to vehicles. Less experienced cyclists should dismount ahead of the roundabout and walk with their bicycle. Follow the same rules that apply to pedestrians. Let's review the roundabout driving instructions one more time. Slow down. Move into the correct approach lane. Yield to pedestrians crossing and any vehicles already circulating in the roundabout. Follow the signs and pavement markings and proceed in a counterclockwise direction. Stay to the right of the center island in the appropriate lane and signal your exit. Remember that vehicles inside the roundabout have the right of way. Larger vehicles need to be given lots of room to maneuver, and emergency vehicles must be given the right of way once other vehicles have exited the roundabout. Thanks for joining me on this informative look at roundabouts, and remember to always yield before entering a roundabout and drive safely.
So thanks for hanging in there until the end, everyone. I really appreciate that. I do have some reflectors here today as well. If you'd like one, I'd be happy to share one with you as well. Yes, I have one question at the end.
I have one question about the roundabout. When you are waiting to get into the roundabout,
Right.
and a lot of cars keep coming off the highway and
Yep.
go right into the roundabout, lickety split.
Yeah.
Am I the one that's supposed to keep waiting? I mean, I know.
Yes.
But
Yes, absolutely.
people are coming from the highway, and I've been waiting there like forever, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see them way down the highway, and they just keep coming into the roundabout.
Yeah. No,
So
you.
if I'm that person coming in, and someone else is waiting.
Yeah.
I do have the right of way to go into the roundabout, or?
If there are other vehicles.
Then let the person who's been stopped and waiting go in.
No, if there are vehicles present within the roundabout, you have to wait. You have to yield to those cars.
I get that. I
Okay.
get they're in there, but I'm saying I'm stopped.
No, you can proceed.
roundabout.
No, you can proceed into it. If they're entering it and so on, and they're at the other side, you can safely enter it. When you can safely enter the roundabout at that point.
I have to do this to get to work. Okay?
Yeah.
So I stop.
No, I know what you're saying.
But the stream just keeps coming and
Yeah.
coming and coming.
Yeah.
Like even though I've been there a long time waiting,
Yeah.
they don't get up to the edge of the roundabout and then let people who've been waiting get into it.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep bombing by.
They have no way of knowing something. That's happened to me, by the way.
It does.
You can see. I mean, it's obvious. You can see.
I see this all the time. I see people stopping
Mhm.
at the entrance to it. You shouldn't be stopping. You should just
You
go with
can't
the
get
flow.
in because they're going so fast.
It's like a train. You can't interrupt the train. And as long as there's
Yeah.
people inside the roundabout and people keep following that person, there's no break in the chain, so it's impossible for you to get in. It's happened to me all the time. It's very frustrating. But the rule is, as long as traffic is in the roundabout, you can't go in. And as
That's
long
correct.
as you can't go in, everyone's going to go bumper to bumper until
Okay, I
there's a
get
break.
that. But if I'm the person now, being that other person coming in lickety split, is it the law that,
right thing to do, that I recognize these people have been waiting a long time, and I stopped that train because I'm now at the front of it. Do I stop at the edge of the roundabout and let those people who have stopped waiting get into the roundabout?
That would be proper etiquette, but
Yeah. Proper etiquette seldom applies, unfortunately. One thing that I would suggest, I know what you're saying because there are certain areas where that is a problem, particularly where you get a lot of heavy traffic entering it and so on, and you're stuck. I get that. You should probably contact your municipality and let them know what your issues are with it. And say, listen, there's clearly a problem here, and it may result in some kind of measure for them to control traffic earlier down the roadway for that traffic that's coming down there as heavily as it is. In most cases, it's there to moderate that flow of traffic, though, and eventually you're going to make your way into it. I can't speak to the exact example that you're giving me. It's not uncommon to what I'm hearing. But the rule of the road is, and there's no laws pertaining to these. These are controlled intersections, basically. The laws apply to controlled intersections. They don't apply to roundabouts per se. But you should contact your municipality, and that if you do have a concern like that maybe they can put another measure in to curtail the volume of traffic that comes in with a stoplight or something further down the road, just to allow the traffic flow to improve. But they should be notified in one way or another. That's really all I can tell you on that one.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
If you could please complete our survey, it would help us improve our seminars as we're planning new ideas and topics. So Monica handed out a survey. If you could fill it out for us, that would be great. If this is your first time attending our seminar, we have a gift bag with some information, magazine, and some books. Please pick it up from Monica as you leave. It looks like this. Also, I have a raffle for a couple of books I'd like to give out. So for those of you that are left, if you can just hang on a sec, I'll draw a couple names.